Hello everyone and welcome to another Wano video, as in this one we're gonna cover all the DLC divisions in an overview and in a quick guide with their strengths, their weaknesses, their unique features, and in general just giving you an overview over all the divisions that you can buy extra for Wano to give you a hint on which of them might be worthwhile for you and which one you can just go overgo, and also give you tips when you have to play against them, what might be their weaknesses to exploit. I did this already for all the base game divisions. You can find the video up top, and I also will make deep dive videos for each of the divisions themselves, so if you want to get more information, you can find that on the channel for each division as well. This here is just a quick guide version. And we're gonna start with the Northag DLC, which is the biggest out of the DLCs so far. It has 10 new divisions, it has Army General campaigns and single player campaigns, so for single player gameplay this is the most important DLC anyways, but it also has the most divisions. It is also the most pricey by far though, costing 25 euros on its own. It is in the season pass system as well though, so you can get it in that bunch as well together with the NEMESIS divisions. And yeah, let's go into those divisions and start with the Dutch, which have a pretty solid tank division here with the 4th Divisie. And they come in with the most Leo 2A force, the heaviest Leos at the time frame. And they have the Leo 2A4C and Leo 2A4B as their heavy tanks. They have a couple of other Leos. Then outside of that, they have good mechanized infantry with their little IFV here with an Ehrlichen 25mm, so good mechanized infantry there as well. A couple of their hot looking little mobilized infantry units. And then they also have an interesting air tab with a plane that you don't get anywhere else so far with the F5 here. And they get good air support out of that. So a really solid deck with decent all-around capabilities. What it lacks are helicopters and long-range AA, and it has weak forward deploy as well, with only one special forces unit that really can't fight. But it has good tanks, it has good air support, and it has good mechanized infantry, so it is a really strong mech infantry deck, and it is also pretty easy to play. So the Dutch here pretty well represented, and if you like Leopards and mechanized infantry, this deck is for you. And then we have the Belgians as the 2nd Benelux division, and they also bring the Lux with them, as they have a couple of Luxembourgian infantry in here as well, which come with forward deploy, so that is really nice. And they are a pretty low to the ground mechanized force. They have Leo 1s in a lot of forms with better fire control, so those are pretty capable Leo 1s and Jagdpanzers. They have good mechanized infantry as well, as they can come with their version here as well of an IFV with a good Ehrlichen on top. They have the artillery that you need. They have a decent recon tab as well, including a little drone here. They have lovely little helicopters from Italy with TOW2s and high speed, and they have a decent air support with the Mirages here as well. So the Dutch are in a really solid spot. They have good air support. They have a really efficient combined arms, low to the ground, that can get out there from the get-go. They don't have any heavy tanks, which is an issue, and they don't have any long-range AA, which is another issue. So those two things for sure play in, but outside of that, they are really solid all around, and they can really bring the hurt to the enemy quickly, and are a pretty easy to play division as well. So yeah, the Benelux, a really easy playing bunch and a nice solid mechanized force as well. The next division in Northag DLC is a multinational force, the MNAT, the Multinational Airborne division, which brings Dutch, British, German, and Belgian paratroopers and marines around in a special forces division basically. We have Gurkha rifles, we have paracommandos from the Belgians, we have Fallschirmjägers, and we have mariners from the Dutch, so all have their own infantry here, a lot of strong infantry units, and then a lot of light units all around that. Light artillery, skirmishers, and weasels here as your little armored forces. And you get some LSV buggies here. In the recon tab, some light helicopters going around. Good, strong recon infantry here as well. Your AA is also a bit lighter, including Skyguards stolen from Argentina as the only gun-based British AA. Helicopters here, Lynx and German BOs, and we get the Buccaneers in the air tab here, so a really solid low-to-the-ground infantry division, but really lacking any heavier equipment. And yeah, it has strong forward-deploy infantry, and it has strong air support, it has a good bunch of light vehicles, but no good artillery, no tanks, and no long-range air superiority fighters, as these guys only have short-range missiles, and that all can be somewhat problematic. The division is a good bit harder to play, as you really have to play around their weaknesses well, and that is not easy, but if you do, you can still be quite successful with the MNET. And then we got the American 9th Infantry Division, which is the most experimental American division so far, and most likely the most experimental that we will get, as it has a lot of testbed units for the late 80s. We got Humvees with guns here for the light infantry, that is the bread and butter infantry of this division. And we got the M198 here with guided ammunition, and in the tank tab, we get Hellfires on COCV Jeeps here, mounted as the best NATO ground-based ATGMs by far, really strong units. M60s here are as your tanks though, a bit weaker, and the recon tab is full of nice stuff as well. We get CV and we get GSR infantry units, we get snipers with anti-materiel snipers in form of the Barrett M82. We get a lot of these little buggies going around as well. We get minigun on a helicopter and the drone, so the recon tab really the strong suit of this division. You get some towed Chaparrals, some helicopters, and then in the air tab also a F-16 here with a big pave claw gun that is supposed to really shred through armor as well as an attack craft. Not really successful in real life, and yeah, we'll see how successful it can be here for you. But the division for sure, as a low to the ground, fast division, is an interesting one, and it is for sure quite the powerhouse at the beginning with its fast light vehicles, good air support and strong infantry, but no heavy tanks and no long-range AA can hold it back decently as well. So it is still a harder to play division because you really have to play to your strength, but trying to dodge your weaknesses, and that is not always easy, and you can get overrun in the mid and late game quite easily in this one. And then as a last NATO division in Northag, we got the 4th Armoured Division for the British, which is a bit older, lower to the ground Armoured Division compared to the base game 1st UK, and it got a lot of chieftains, including the older chieftain Mark 6-2, and then even some older Centurion tanks left over, including an AVRE version with some reactive armor here put on. Then a decent infantry tab as well, with a lot of strong infantry squads, but no warriors. Instead, you rely on the older FV432 as your transport here. You get a couple of different versions of it with Milan or with double MG, for example, but that is your main transport, which means that you are cheaper, but you also are a bit weaker compared to the warrior infantry that you get in other British division. Your recon tab is what you would expect: Scimitar, Scorpions, Foxes, and decent infantry, and some high optics helicopters. You get the best AA piece for the British with the Rapier Darkfire, and in the air tab you get some interesting Jaguars with missiles on top, and some interesting Phantoms that also, next to carrying bombs, carry long-range Skyflash AR-to-air missiles, so really all-rounder aircraft, and that is a pretty interesting deck that gets you strong infantry, good medium tanks, good air support, but no IFV, no forward deployment, and no high-end tanks, which for an armored division is a bit of a problem. So yeah, let's go over to the packed side of this DLC. And on packed side, we got a new nation with this DLC, with the Polish, which have 3 divisions in it. And the first one here is the 4th Mechanized Polish Division, which has a lot of T-55s, including some with some mine-clearing rockets that you can use in-game to blow up stuff as well, which is for sure a unique and pretty solid tank as well. And then we got a lot of mechanized infantry with BMP ones, and also with the Scott transport. A lot of those coming around in different versions, and that is giving you a high capacity, a decent firepower vehicle here with fast speed, with the Scott 2, that gives you a decent amount of transport slots in it. And that means that you have bigger squadrons out of these mechanized units than other packed and even most NATO divisions, and that is for sure a strength. You also get an interesting AA unit with the 23mm with some Strelas mounted on top, and a lot of little helicopters in form of the Me-2 Urn, and then in the air tab some classic mix going around. And the strength of the deck is really good mech infantry, cheap combined arms, and a solid helicopter tab. The air tab is pretty weak, and you lack high AP, which is a Polish issue in general, because they have few conquers and similar things, and you have no real forward deployment, so that holds you back a bit as a lower to the ground division. But in general, still a medium to play division, as the lack of high AP is the only thing that you really have to skirt around. The rest of the deck, though, is playing quite solidly. The next Polish division is the 20th Pancerna, which is their heaviest division, and it has a lot of T-72s, including the special Polish T-72M2 Wilk, which is the only T-72 with a really long-range gun, thanks to better fire control, and a good armor and good capabilities in general. The deck also has the Dana Howitzer as a really good little artillery piece. It has infantry in BMP2s and BMP1s here in good numbers, a couple more Scots going around as well. So a solid infantry tab for a tank division as well. And then when we go into the recon tab, it has decent options there as well. It has the Coups, has some helicopters and some MiG-21s. And it is for sure a really good tank division with strong medium tanks, good mechanized infantry, and good artillery. No forward deploy once more, weak air here as well, with only MiG-21 fighters, and a lack of high AP to some extent as well, as you don't have any high capability ATGMs. Make you struggle a bit sometimes, but it is still pretty easy to play division. I would say difficulty here for this one, easy. The third Polish formation is the Korpus Desantowy, which is a heavily infantry-focused division with Marines and Airborne forces in it, which are all high-capability infantry, with the Polish Topaz amphibious assault vehicle as one of their main transports, and strong infantry all around, with the decent loadouts with medis, a lot of machine rifles and shock traits and special forces traits and resolute traits going around. Your artillery tab is surprisingly good for light infantry formations as well, including these little rockets and some big 203mm howitzers. Your tank tab has some interesting units like the ASU 85 inside and a lot of BT-76s. Your recon tab has decent infantry and the first of the V3s, which you get a good couple more in the helicopter tab as well, with the most modern Polish helicopter of the time. And your air tab has the Polish MiG-29s and a good couple of Su-22 options as well, with 6 different loadouts there going around. So this deck has good forward, strong infantry, good air support here, and good artillery. It has no IFVs, it lacks long-range AA on the ground, and it once more lacks high-capability AP, as the Polish just don't get any conkers, they only have the old Fagot ATGMs. Next in Northag, we got the 25th Tank Division of the Soviets, which is the most T-64 heavy division that we got so far, as Northag was about the T-64s for the Soviets, and you get a lot of them here. You get good infantry in BMP-2s and BMP-1s with Conquerors here, but your slots are heavily limited. You get the good Master artillery and some Hyacinths as well. The Master S as a really high capable artillery. Here, Recon tab brings you recon drones and also some T-64B1 recon tanks, the first Soviet recon tanks that we got, with some recon forward deploy. Helicopter tab is all you need, and air tab gives you a lot of air superiority fighters to help you protect, with some Su-25s going around as well. And the strengths of the decks are the strong tanks, the strong IFV infantry, and a lot of air superiority fighters to keep those tanks alive. The weaknesses are no forward deploy. The deck is pretty costly, as you don't have many cheap units going around, and you have slow transports with those IFVs and so on, so deploying in the early stages can be a bit more difficult, which I would say puts it at medium difficulty, because if you can get your combined arms in places, it is really strong and easy to play, but you sometimes can get outmaneuvered quite easily, and then you are struggling with this deck. And then we get the final division with the Knife Panzer of the NVA, which for me is my favorite division of the DLC, but that is because I am from an East German family, and my family had attachments to this one as well. This division gets the most modern Soviet T-72 with the T-72S. Not as good of fire control as the Wilk, but it has an ATGM launched out of the gun with the Severe, giving it a long range capability with a strong 2,800 meter 21 penetration missile. So a good one there for sure. The infantry can come in BMP-1s and BMP-2s, which is really nice for this division, as you get the only East German division with BMP-2s here. Artillery comes solidly as well with ARM-70s and your classic Gwozdika and Akatsiya. Recon tab, pretty standard. AA tab, pretty standard. Helicopter tab, pretty standard. And so is the air tab. So this division has strong medium tanks. It has a good IFV tab and infantry there as well. Strong artillery, similar to the Polish tank division really. No forward deploy, slow transport, and weak air superiority fighters here. Still a medium division to play. Maybe even on the easier end of that, as you get a good combined arms that is pretty affordable. You can suffer some losses without losing the game. Your tanks aren't that costly while still being decently survivable, but you aren't really able to rush, and you still might lose in the late game to some heavier divisions as well. So let's move on to the next DLC. And this DLC is the first Nemesis, the AIRASSAULT DLC, which is a quick, small DLC with only 2 divisions. It only costs you $5 as well. Nemesis divisions for Eugen always work that way. Some of them are voted by the community, some of them are just put together by Eugen with 2 thematically somewhat similar or connected divisions. And in this one, it is 2 AIRASSAULT divisions. And on the Soviet side, we get the 56 VDV or Air Assault Division, which is a bit of the heavier air assault ones. It doesn't have forward deploy, but it has tanks, as it is the Afghanistan veterans, and that really shifts the division a good bit, including some modified versions of the T-62 here. And then in the infantry tab, you get some veteran infantry, including ones that can come in the Mi-24D as a transport helicopter, and then also some BMP-2 infantry actually, which are modified with better side armor, and some infantry units in BTRs with a lot of interesting modifications, including some with big S8 rocket launchers on top. So that is the mechanized force here in this division. A lot of interesting little battlefield verifications, including some strong recon units as well, with ZSUs with ground radars instead of air radars, and Spetsnaz with stingers stolen from Afghanistan as well. Air tab with some MiG-27s, and yeah, decent AA tab here as well. So the 56 strength and weaknesses, good mechanized infantry with all those little vehicles, good helicopters, good artillery tap, as well as you get the cluster mortars, which are pretty interesting as well, and a lot of other options here as well that are all pretty good too. And then you get no long range AA though, no high-end tanks, and no high-end fighters as well. Difficulty, I would put it on medium as well, as those weaknesses in the late game can be a bit problematic and you struggle sometimes a bit with that, but it is for sure a division that you can get into. And then on the other side of this Airborne DLC, we got the 101st Airborne, which is another helo-borne focused division. That's why they don't get forward deploy, but they get a lot of helicopter transports. And here we start with the Green Beret and some Chinook helicopter that even has a minigun on it, and ECM around as well. So this strong transport with a strong, if not the strongest infantry unit in the game, and a lot of other good air rifles and the infantry. It gets tanks, unlike its 82nd brethren, because it is a bit of a heavier division, with M1 IPs coming around as tanks. Couple of long range, but no self-propelled artillery. Good recons, including the Delta Force, which can come in Special Forces Humvees as well. And then in the air helicopter tab, you get a lot of options, including little birds with chain guns and weaponized Black Hawks here, Black Hawk gunships with F-15s in the air tab as your ASFs. So, strengths of this deck, good for deploy infantry with the deltas and a lot of infantry following it up in general. Great helicopters as well. Weaknesses, you lack good strike aircrafts. Those phantoms here are pretty weak, and you have a weak artillery tab as well. And that can be really an issue because you lack fire support, whilst you also don't have IFVs. So all the fire support assets on this deck are relatively weak outside of helicopters, and that makes it somewhat hard to play division because you aren't the fastest, and then you still have to clutch it out whilst being pretty limited in your fire support option there. If you play your infantry and your couple of tanks well, it can still win absolutely, but it is not that easy to play, and it is harder than it looks. And then we come to the next DLC, which is the first community voted one, the Plateau de Albion, which is about an airborne assault of the Soviets against the French missile silos for their nuclear missiles on the Plateau de Albion. And the French defensive forces are pretty light with the 152nd Infantry Division, which has a couple of Marines and Special Forces helping the reservists out. And it has a lot of APC transports in the form of VBs and VIBs that come around here as light transport, so it is quick with a lot of light fire support there from 50 cals and 20 millimeters, and it has a lot of other light vehicles going around in the tank tab and recon tab with AMLs, AMX-13s, and EBRs coming around as well. Good infantry all around there as well. And then a couple of other older equipments going around like Bofors, Curatels, and Crusader and Magister planes, for example. And then also some newer ones with the Super Étendard, the only division that has those kind of planes as well. It has a really solid mobile infantry force and a good air support with all of those different airplanes, and a lot of light vehicles, but with no heavy tanks and no heavy anti-tank guns. It lacks capabilities of dealing with those kind of units. It has a weak artillery tab as well, and no IFVs, and all of that make it pretty difficult to play, because those are your usual, normal things that you rely on as a player often, and you don't get any of those support stuff, whilst not being an airborne force either that has insanely strong forward deploy. So it is a hard to play division, and for sure, maybe one of the hardest out there, but it is a unique division as well, so it might still work well for that. And the formation that was sent against the French is the 76 VDV, which is dropped behind enemy lines without helicopters, but strong airborne infantry with strong fire support from BTRDs, and more importantly, also support from BMP2s that come around, and BMD3s with fantastic ATGMs and some strong firepower autocannons. It has good recon forces as well, together with a recon drone, and it has a lot of air support from heavy planes, MiG-31 long-range ASFs, and we have Su-24s with a lot of different loadouts as support as well. SEAD, LGB, and AT variants here coming around strong. So, yeah, it has a really strong infantry tab with those mechanized forces assisting strong infantries. It has a good air support, and it has good forward deploy, thanks to all those units coming with forward deploy trade as well. It has no tanks, no helicopters, and no long-range AA though. So it has heavy weaknesses and heavy strengths, and that leaves it as a medium to play division, because strength that it has leave it like a formation that you can absolutely play, but sometimes one of those weaknesses catches you off, and then it really can make you struggle. Plus the enemy also kind of knows what's coming, so medium difficulty, but thanks to the IFVs, still pretty easy to play. Let's move on to the final DLC. And that final DLC is the Early Access pack. If you got the game in Early Access, you have all those divisions for free. Otherwise, you can buy them for $10. It is the most cost efficient of the DLCs in that regard as well, because you get 7 divisions for $10. And they are pretty interesting ones as well. Also, the first one here being the 24th US, which is a mix of normal, regular army forces at National Guards. And it has a lot of Bradleys, National Guard Bradleys with ITOs, and normal Bradleys with TOW2s coming around for you. And it has tanks from National Guard and the normal army as well, with M1s and M1 IPs. Artillery, similar thing. And it also gets the F-15 Strike Eagle as an air support unit, so it really gets some strong units there as well. And the deck is really a cost-efficient combined arms, especially as you can go a bit lower with the National Guard here compared to other US decks cost-wise. Good air support, a lot of IFVs, and doesn't have that many high hit point in US infantry units, only a couple ones going around there, and it has no forward deploy, so it always comes in late, but it comes with a good force, and I would say it is an easy to play division, as you have a really, really good combine arms in this deck. Now we have the 35th US Infantry, which is nearly fully National Guards, and with that also based on older equipment. You get National Guard rifles with recolors rifles here, and a lot of M113 as transport for these guys. Artillery is all up to the M110s as the National Guard variant, National Guard M60s here in different forms that come around with the Rise and the A3 version. And then in the Recon tab, you get a lot of those kind of guys as well. Recon planes here with the Dragonflies and some Savvy infantry. Rolands, the only American Rolands, which were a bit of a test bed here in the A8 tab next to Ihawks and good old Dusters. National Guard gunship UEs here going around as well. And a good amount of different air units, including more of the Dragonflies coming around as well. The deck is an interesting one. It has a cheap combined arms, as you are really starting low to the ground. It has a really good AA tab with the Roland Ihawk mix, keeping you safe. And high infantry numbers that are pretty capable fire support-wise. It has no IVs, no forward deploy, and no high-end tanks though, so it struggles a bit there. And I would say it's a hard to play division, because you also have to keep check of the National Guards all coming with the reservist trait. So even if you take them with one veterancy, that is a bit hard to play, and you will need your military police to really fix that with their trait fixing that issue. So hard to play division, but a really fun one to play as well. Berlin Command is the next NATO division that represents the West Berlin defending forces of NATO, with the French, the American, and the British Army involved, plus some German police forces, giving you a great mix of infantry here from all those nations, including some West German police, and the same mix of forces in the other tabs as well, including tanks from all three nations, and recon units here as well, with some more German special police forces and PSSEBs as American special forces here coming around with the false flag trait, as they use civilian clothes as stay-behind units. And in the air tab, also some special units here trying to assist Berlin with the F-117 Nighthawk and the long-range French Mirage 4 bombers, plus a couple of Harriers as air support. The deck, for sure, a really interesting one with its multinational standing, and because of that, it has a really good mix of tanks. It has a really strong infantry tab as well, with a lot of options, and the air tab with the Nighthawk and its special capability of being really stealthy and hard to detect for the enemy, and being able to drop its bombs without being intercepted before that quite often, is quite nice. It has no IFVs, no forward deployment, and no long-range AA, as they were not allowed to have any really capable AA missiles in West Berlin. So that really are some real issues, and that, I would say, makes it harder to play division, but it is a really fun one as well. And then we come to the 4 pack divisions in this DLC, which start with the 27th Guards Motostrelki division, which is the most modern of the Soviet divisions in the game, based on their plans for the modernized 1990s divisions, coming around with modernized infantry in BTR-80s and the most modern IFV with the BMP-3, which comes with great long-range ATGMs and a good 1mm fire support gun. BMP-2 AGs here involved as well, capable ATGMs with the Conqueror's M, and a good artillery tab, including some Acacias with guided ammunition, tank tab with solid T-80s, and AA with Tunguskas, OSAs, and modernized Strelatem Ms as modernized forces as well, and the T8M as a modernized version of the SU as well, with some Vickers ATGMs as an interesting unit as well. So the division, for sure, an interesting one. Strong mechanized forces, good fire support all around, good AA, especially against helicopters, with the Tunguskas and the Osas and the Strelas. Weaknesses: weak air superiority fighters, no forward deployment, and pretty expensive units, especially for the packed side. Difficulty, I would say, still pretty easy, as you really have such a strong combined arms that is all around there, and that you can't really mess up. So yeah, 27th, a really solid division there, and one of the most interesting one of the packed ones. And then we have the Rügener Gruppierung, which represents the island of Rügen's defensive forces of the East Germans, and a couple of Polish forces there as well, including marine forces of the East Germans. And we have a really couple of interesting units like these massive Gruk AA missiles here that are the heaviest hitting of them all, one-shotting every single plane out there. Some interesting other options here, including old 100mm AA guns that can also be used against tanks. You get some tank options here as well, including T-72s, but those are unmodernized from the tank school around there. A couple of Polish units assisting, for example, with Meridas as well. And then you have a mine-clearing vehicle here as artillery tab. Infantry is including some Marine Pioneer and a couple of Polish units as well that can help you out, together with some reserve and normal Motschützen units here mixed in. And you also, in the recon tab, get the KSK, the Kommando, the Kampfschimmerkommando special forces of the East Germans, and some Mi-14 and Mi-8 helicopters with one of the Mi-14s also coming as a really long-range ATGM helicopter option, with the longest range ATGM for anything not plane, and that is a really interesting unit for sure, as it also has 30 damage and can one-shot tanks quite easily with that. So the division has strong AA, cheap combined arms, good long-range AT. It has no IFVs, and it lacks high AP tools in a decent number as well, and it has a lot of issues with the lack of forward deployment and combined arms in general. It's a harder to play division. It doesn't really get onto the board as easily, and it does lack the high-end stuff to really go around, and that leaves it as a hard division for sure to play. It is an interesting one for sure, though. It's one of the more unique ones out there. And then we come to the East German Berlin forces, the Berliner Gruppierung, which comes in with a lot of infantry, including the Wachschützen, the border forces of the East Germans here, which come with quite a lot of forces with strong units, including some of their special forces in the recon tab as well. And a lot of Modschützen, though all of them in SPWs, including a special variant with a Strela that is a really capable force as well. And then the division gets good artillery tab here with some old tools included, like these World War II vintage M30s, a couple of tanks with a lot of older T-55s and even some T-34s, and some good bunch of AT guns. And then the air and helicopter tabs are rather standard. The deck has strong infantry and a cheap combined arms once more, and good artillery too. It has no IFVs, no forward deployment, and a lack of high AP, and that is a bad combo because you want to get up there quickly, usually with a light to the ground deck like this, and you don't quite get there, so you have to really start pushing early on, and that can be costly, and if you struggle with that, you will fall behind. The difficulty, I would say actually medium to play, but it can be tough sometimes to really finish the enemy off, though you get the low to the ground combined arms, and that makes it pretty simple to play, and you get what you need to do. It's just that sometimes winning is a bit harder with this deck. And the final division of the DLCs are the Soviet forces for Berlin, which is the Sex Motostrelki that also has a good couple of East German detachments, like Modschützen in BMPs, including some, with Fopos as well, and Luftsturmjägers with helicopters as special forces. And then you get a good amount of normal Soviet Motostrelkis, only with BMP-1s though. Artillery with Hyacinth and Uragan, really capable. You get Spätzgruppe, a special forces here in the recon tab, and a T-64 T-80 mix of tanks with a couple T-55s still helping out. Long range Buk and good Tunguska AA, and in the air tab MiG-31s and a good couple of MiG-21s as support. The division has really strong AA and artillery, and a solid combined arms in general. Weaknesses are that the infantry is a bit weaker compared to most decks, and a bit costlier as well compared to other lighter formations. It has weak helicopters, and it is a pretty slow deck. Like, you don't have forward deploy, and you need to get your tools online. Artillery doesn't come for free, and so on. Difficulty, I would say medium. It is just a solid combined arms deck. It doesn't do anything super fancy, and it can't really outshine everybody in late game or early game, so you really have to just play standard. And then it's just a solid medium division, and finishes off this quite nicely here as the last division from the DLC. So yeah, let me know down below what you think about all these divisions and the DLCs, which one you would pick up and which one you would recommend. And yeah, see you in the next one. Bye bye, and have a great day.